Okay, so this lesson is on sampling methods. Okay, we should be able to determine what type of sampling method was used in a study and also identify bias in a study. All right, so why this is important is really because how we get our data vastly, or at least can vastly change the results. And so we want to be aware of it and also know what we're doing so that we can improve it if necessary. Take a look at this. It says Jacinta and Felix were asked to design a study to answer the question, what proportion of students at this school listen to music while studying? Jacinta decided to survey her friends in her class. Below are her results. And then Felix decided to observe students in the library. Below are his results. If you look at this, you can see that Jacinta here has, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 students that she surveyed, and they're friends in her class. Here, Felix decided to observe students in the library. He has 100 total kids, and he has 43% of those were listening to music in the library. So whose study is better? Why? Well, if you look at this, you could definitely say, well, Felix has taken into account more students. He's observed more students. He also didn't ask them. He just observed. And also the people that he observed, he may or may not know. Jacinta, it says here that it's her friends. So this might skew some of our results. And there's only 8 students that she surveyed. So whose study is better? Probably this one. Okay, so we're going to talk about some of these things today. All right, well, there are different types of studies. There's a sample study, an experiment, and an observational study. So let's just kind of go over each of those. I'm going to highlight a few of these things here. In this first one, in the sample survey, it asks every member of the sample the same set of questions and records the answers. So I'm just going to highlight questions. So this is important. If you look at an example, it says a newspaper randomly polls people about which candidate they prefer. So a poll, it's kind of, hey, I'm asking those questions and I'm going to take a certain sample of that. Okay. Experiment. An experiment applies some sort of treatment to the sample and then measures the effects. Those treatment and measures the effects are really important. So an example of this would be a doctor conducts a study by prescribing a new medication to half of his patients and measuring the effects. Okay. And then an observational study, this is sort of what Felix did, observes members of the sample without them being affected. A grocery store wants to know what types of bags the customers prefer. An employee stands near the checkout counter and records what type of bags customers choose. Again, he's not asking them, he's just observing. Okay, so those are the 3 types of studies. So take a look at these examples here and determine what type of study would be used to answer the following questions. So how many students take a free breakfast at Creative Arts? Probably a good one to do that would be observational. Where we could just watch and see. Okay, A group of plants is not growing well. Wren wants to try a new type of fertilizer to see if it will help. Will the fertilizer improve the growth? This will be an experiment. Because you're going to apply a treatment. Okay. Would the customers at Planet Fitness prefer if the gym opened earlier? So this will be a sample survey. There we go. And we'd need to ask, right? And so you can see, right, asks member of the sample, probably then the sample would be the people who go to Planet Fitness. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. We're going to get into a little bit more detail here a little bit later on. Okay, important is bias. So we want to be aware of bias because it can impact our results. So take a look at this. A psychologist is conducting surveys to study the happiness levels of people who live in the neighborhood. She asked the same questions to the two samples below chosen from the population of the neighborhood. Okay, she starts by sampling people in the park on a sunny Saturday afternoon and finds that 65% of people are happy. She also sampled some people on Monday morning and found that 35% of people indicated they were happy. Why are the results so different? Well, we can probably guess it's sunny one day. That helps. It's a Saturday afternoon, so a lot of people are off. So that probably impacts a bit of the mood, right? The other one, it's a Monday morning. People are just starting to get to work. It's before work has even started, so they know they have stuff all through the week probably. So that probably is going to influence their happiness a bit. So these are different results probably because basically the difference in environment and how we've set it up. So this study would have some bias. So a study has bias if it produces results that misrepresent a population. So perhaps the people right here might have answered differently if it was a Saturday afternoon, right? Especially if it's a sunny afternoon. Maybe by then their idea or their mood would have changed. So that is what we're looking at. Okay, so we want to try to figure out those things and be aware of how those are showing up in our studies. Okay, so we have different ways of sampling or collecting data. So when conducting research or collecting data, it is important to have a random, I've highlighted that, a random sample, okay? Where each person has the same chance of being selected. So this is the more random, the better, and there are different ways that this can be done. Okay, so we're gonna go through 5 of them. On this slide, you'll see 3. Okay, the first is called a self-selecting method. This is where a sample of people can volunteer to be in the sample. An example would be a customer at Panera can choose to fill out a customer feedback card. Now, this method has a high risk of bias because you're only having a certain number of people that are answering, and those, it's not randomized that much. It's just people who are self-selecting. So if you're choosing to fill out a customer feedback card, it might be because you're very unhappy, right? If you're pretty happy, you might not think about, hey, I'm gonna go fill out the customer feedback card. So this can really skew your results, So there is a high risk of bias here. Another way is the systematic sampling. This is better. A rule is used to select members of a population. So you're going to look at those and say, all right, well, how do I want to apply a certain rule? So like in the example that we have here, starting with a randomly chosen ID number, every fifth student, right? Every fifth student ID number was chosen, okay? And that student was asked to fill out a survey. So this is more randomized. We don't know what we're going to get, and they're asked to fill that out. So that's a systematic way where you just have a rule in place. So maybe say that. Okay. Another way is something called a stratified sampling. Now, the stratified is a population is divided into groups that share a similar characteristic, and then a sample is randomly chosen from each group. So let me give you an example. The population is grouped according to age, and a random sample is chosen from each group. So in this case, that similar characteristic would be age. Okay, so let's summarize. Maybe this is some people from each group. Say, all right, well, I'm going to take some from here. These are the people I'm taking. So each group of two, I'm going to take some, okay? It's called stratified. Okay, again, another way would be a cluster sampling. This is where a population is divided into convenient clusters, and then entire clusters are chosen at random for sampling. Okay, so you've got then, okay, they're all split into threes, right? 3 groups here, and then they sample just this one right here. So that's one way that you could do it. So an example of this would be a number of hospitals around the country are randomly chosen. So they pick some hospitals around the country, and then all of the nurses in the chosen hospitals are surveyed. So dividing it up by hospitals all around the country, and then all nurses. So hopefully that makes sense. This is really just like choose a couple groups and sample everyone. In one of the groups. Okay. Convenience sampling. The sample is chosen by only selecting subjects that are close or easy to get to. And as you might expect, this has also a high risk of bias. So an example of this would be a city wants to know what % of people in the city own a dog or a cat. A city worker goes door to door in the neighborhood around City Hall to ask people about their pets. So they're only going close to City Hall in their neighborhood and asks about that. They're not talking about the whole city or random spots around the city, so that it's just the convenience or close and easy, right? So that's why we call it convenience sampling. So as much as we can, we probably want to avoid the convenience sampling and the self-selecting, just because they have a high risk of bias. But you'll notice that, a lot of times these are methods that are used. And then you just want to be aware of it if it is used. Okay. Let's go over a couple of here. All right, identify what type of sampling was used in the following examples. Mr. Chisholm wants to know what reward students would like the best. movie and popcorn, or outside time and a drink. He puts up a survey sheet outside his door to poll the students. Students are going to answer it or not. So this is they're self-selecting. Because they choose if they want to participate. Okay. There are 5 elementary schools in the district. Kalia asks every 7th student going through the lunch line at each school what their favorite lunch menu item was. Okay, well, this one is the systematic where there's a rule, right? And that rule was every 7th student. So that's how we know, right? Okay. Ian wants to know what the most popular sport at his school is. He asks all of the students in his IM3 class what their favorite sport is. Well, this is, for Ian, he only asked the people in his IM3 class because that's convenient. So this would be, it's close to where he is. He's in the class. It doesn't make it very hard, right? It makes it really nice and easy, which is awesome in some ways, but it's maybe not the best way to sample. It would be convenience. It's easy. Okay, and that's a little bit about sampling methods. You can go ahead and give the assignment a try, and don't forget to write this into your planner. Good luck. I hope this works well.